I didn't get to watch this show when it was first on. I don't know what it was that didn't attract me to it, but in retrospect, I can't believe I didn't. I've recently gone through the entire series again.
And it's Thursday. You know what that means? It's time for us to have another Throwback Thursday. And we're gonna go back in time, throw up that celebration, because Heart of the Stories we tell, and me, Rob the host, is going to take us back to a quick nostalgic look and see how a story was that might be a little bit on the older side. So celebrate your week almost being over as we look at
Charmed is one of those funny shows that was on, I think it was WB at the time, but what's now CW, and is one of those urban fantasy adventure horror things that had a woman's tilt to it. So for Women in Fantasy, or Women in Horror Month, I've decided I wanted to cover it in my throwback. For those of you that don't know, I do story videos every Sunday where I come up with theories of storytelling based on different things I've seen, and I review stories as they come up, and this is a throwback Thursday to talk about an older one. If any of that sounds interesting, click subscribe. As of the recording of this, I've got 99 subscribers. Maybe you get to be number 100. Alright, so I already did a video on urban fantasy and talked about this. I really did an entire thing, the Women of Urban Fantasy from Samantha to Sookie, and I just did Women in Horror last week, and this week I'm doing the the Twilight and the entire idea of the paranormal romance. And that kind of has a bit to do with this too. But I've also talked about what the difference is between a boy's story and a girl's story. Hint, there isn't one. So at the end of the day, you have to wonder, what makes this different? Is this just a girls' horror or girls' urban fantasy? Not really. There's a lot going on here. And I'll be honest, it's one of my mom's favorite shows, and she rewatches it all the time, so I've probably seen every episode multiple times. But I also have a friend that watched it, and his description of it always sticks with me. It's the fantasy horror show for people who don't like fantasy and horror. I don't know if that's quite right, but let's get into this and talk about the details. And of course, I have to start with what I think overall. And overall, I give this a gold. It's a good story, it's a great jumping on point for new people in urban fantasy, and there's some really awesome genre in there. It's far from perfect, but I think that if you gave it a chance, most would enjoy it. Let's throw this up there and get into more detail.
So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. Ba-dun-dun-dun.
And as always, we start with setting. And it's modern day, more or less. I mean, it was the 90s, but modern day. And San Francisco? I mean, just Earth? A relatively modified Earth, but not much. And the characters. Well, the cast changed a few times, but at the end of the day, it's the story about three sisters. Well, four, I guess. Three and a half. And they are the charmed ones. What does that mean? Well, that's a little complicated. They inherited their power from their mother, who was a witch before them, and in and of themselves, each of them have their own unique, special X-Men like gift, but on top of that, each one is capable of casting rituals and brewing potions to do different magical effects. But their big zonker power is when they come together, they can merge the power of three and do miraculous things. Each one of them has, like I said, their own special ability, and each one is a little different. Originally, Prue was the third sister. However, she died early in the series. I want to say it's season 2. Maybe it's season 3? Robbing them of that godlike power of the power of 3. However, they found out that they had a half-sister, Paige Matthews, who comes and joins them. By the way, she's half charmed one, but she's also half angel. So she has all the angelic power. We'll get into that when we talk about our next character. But in general, each of them are flawed and normal individuals living relatively normal lives that then develop these powers. And that's one of the important things. The theme song says it best. I am human, just like everybody else. Don't I deserve to be loved? And as such, it deals with a lot of that as their angst of the series. Up next is our first male protagonist, a white lighter, read that as Angel, who has been assigned to be the guardian of the charmed ones. And, well, Leo here is a rather interesting character in and of himself. And he falls in love with one of the charmed ones, naturally. Like I said, this does tie back to that paranormal romance angle. He's not the only love interest, even for that character, but he ends up being the one true one, even having kids, which is where we have the later characters, Wyatt and Chris. Although that is a very complicated set of characters to talk about, so I'm just going to say kids of the charmed ones for now. As an angel, otherwise known as a white lighter, Leo has very specific powers. He doesn't have wings in this, he teleports, and he can teleport others. The ability is called orbing, because it turns you into a ball of energy, an orb, and sends you to your destination, and then you rematerialize. It's pretty cool. He also has an energy blast capability, and he has the ability to heal. But he has some weaknesses too. But that's not really that important. Then we have my personal favorite character, one that doesn't make it through the whole series. His name is Cole. In fact, part of me was going to say he doesn't get a full write-up as a character, he'd only be in the good, the bad, and the ugly. But screw it, this is my show, he's my favorite character, so he's a character in the character section. He starts off as a villain, he ends up as a villain, but in between, he falls in love with one of the sisters. And it's actually a really cool story. There's a lot of depth to him. Even when he's doing bad things, he tries to be good for Phoebe sometimes. And at the same time, there's this whole give and take where you kind of are almost rooting for them, even though they don't end up to be the canonical couple. Phoebe ends up with a Cupid, if I remember correctly. But either way, he has literally different time periods, have different powers, including being the source of all evil. Yeah, like the devil. He starts off as a full blown demon, though, not a dark lighter, which would be the reverse of Leo. But let's go get complicated and talk about the plot. Okay, it has a plot that revolves like a soap opera, but it also has a plot that revolves out of time at different points. Because, well, this is dealing with time travel. Remember when I said those kids were important characters later, but they looked like adults? That's because adults them come back in time, and okay, yeah, lots of out of sequence stuff. But overall, the plot is relatively linear, with it following the lives, specifically more often than not the love lives, but just in general the lives of the three charmed ones. Okay, that wasn't as complicated as I thought. What about point of view? The Halliwell sisters, originally these three, later, like I said, when Shannon Doherty was forced off the show, they changed it up to the other three, but they're our eyes into the universe for the first half of the show. Because they're still learning about their magic and their powers, we end up with a lot of they are our audience surrogate asking the questions, needing to go to the books, needing to go to Leo, needing to go to the powers that be to find out what's going on. In later seasons, we do have other characters that play that role, but we still keep the point of view of the sisters for the most part. Except for the few times we transfer over to one of the boyfriends or to one of the bad guys. But what about theme and symbolism? And here is where the gold rating really shines. Because each episode has its own theme, each season has its own set of themes, and they change ever so slightly. But overall, the show itself is really all about finding your place in the world, which of course is what most stories are about. It's all about being thrown headlong into something you're not ready for, but at the same time has these strong themes of love. And this is where this is going to get difficult to explain, because it's not just the romantic love of the normal paranormal lover. There's that too. But it's also the love of the sisters, the love of innocence, the love of friends and family. And of course, then you have the question of, if you have all this power, this capability, like any superhero story, how is it you can't fix your own problems? These three individuals especially, for all intents and purposes, might as well be superheroes. They're the charmed ones. And their power is almost godlike, but at the same time, their restrictions are too. And how it is that that interacts is beautiful symbolism. So what's so good, bad, and ugly about this? The good there's a lot of, but I'm going to start off with Cole. Remember I talked about him? When they do this sort of story, when they want to get deep and they want to really make you think, they do an awesome job at it. They make you really question what is the nature of good, what is the nature of evil. There's a storyline about things called the avatars that I won't spoil for you, but it really is awesome. And at the same time, they have such an in-depth character. They just, you can feel like these are real people even in the extraordinary circumstances. But like I said, not perfect. So, the bad. Alright, well, they throw away some of that in some spectacular ways when they decide that they're done with the storyline. The end of the Cole storyline really annoyed me. But also with Phoebe, the way the Cupid storyline was dangled and then dropped and then re-grabbed was a little annoying a couple of times. And I know that the fact that they had to let Shannon Doherty go for personal reasons was annoying, but that really felt like a dropped plot thread too with Death. There were a lot of missed opportunities. But the ugly was that they didn't have enough space to breathe. They were always worried about cancellation, and as such, they just never really had a chance to shine with some of these stories. A lot of them were so great and could have been so much better with just a little more polishing. Now, just to end this out, I have heard that they're working on another revamp of it to rebroadcast it. However, the last time that was talked about, they were talking about placing it in the 70s, and I was not happy with that setting change. That version that never got off the ground also was going to change the characters so they weren't sisters, they were strangers, and I think that's an unneeded change. Overall, like I said up top, this is a gold series. This is one of those ones that I believe, honestly, if you give it a chance, this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Supernatural. So if you like either of those, you're going to love this. But it's also written from a different point of view than we're used to. So I'm curious. Have any of my followers here watched Charmed? If so, what did you think? And do you think I'm crazy, or was Cole totally not the best character? Alright. Either way, I need to ask you to give me a thumbs up, like, and share this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. As of the recording of this, I'm at 99 subscribers. When I hit 100, I'm giving away an Amazon gift card. But even more than that, I just want to hear your thoughts and have you join our little community. I want to build this up so that we can talk about stories, good, bad, and ugly. And who knows, if they do get a Charmed series off the ground again, maybe I'll review it every week like I do the superhero shows now. For now, I hope you have a good night, and thank you for walking with me through the heart of the stories we tell.